Hey, you Strat fans, it's me, your boy, Colonelstrat, returning for another video, and today we're diving into one of my favorite games, Ark. This game has been one that I've played since it was in early access, and since the time I started it, I was like, there's a lot of strategic thinking in this survival game. There's a lot of things you gotta plan out for. But I want to ask the question, is Ark Survival Evolved really strategic, or is it just like every old survival game out there? It's just pure luck. Trash! Well, today we're going to dive into that and answer that question for you, Strat fans. So remember, as always, to leave a like, smash that sub button for me, and leave a comment down below. If you're an Ark fan, or aficionado, or a beach bob, make sure that you let me know in the comments. As a side note, I know I've been away for a while, and I do apologize for that, Strat fan. It's been an adjustment period, and I just want to say that going forward, I'm going to be focusing more on quality, so don't expect these videos to be back-to-back or so many videos coming out. They're going to be lower quantity, but higher in quality. I'm going to be putting more effort into them because I just want to share this passion with y'all. I don't want to turn gaming into a job, because then it would turn my escape into a prison. So I'm going to be pouring my passion into this. Me, my editor Drew, we're going to be working on it at a good, decent pace so we can give you the best videos ever. If you saw that new one coming up, that Civilization 5 one that dropped, that is just a taste. But on the opposite side, it does take a longer time to do these videos. It's just going to take some time. Anyway, let's dive into Ark and answer that question that we're all thinking now. Is Ark Survival Evolved strategic or not? So the biggest question when we first load in and spawn into the Ark is location. Where are we going to put our base? Where are we going to have the best access to resources, tames, and also be relatively safe if we're on a PvP server from hostile tribes? Now location, location, location. It's very, very crucial in a game like this. Now, are you going to build in a cave? And depending on the world rules, are you going to be able to build there and have a decent base? Or are you going to have to sacrifice having certain things in your base to be able to have the seclusion of a cave? Or do you want to have a flat open plain saying pretty much come raid me, but you have the resources and the know-how to construct turrets, field hostile dinos on neutral so that you can defend your base? Location is everything, but for me it comes down to several factors. One, are resources plentiful and within easy distance so that you don't have to track halfway across the map? For example, say you wanted to get into the metal age and want to be close to some metal. Well, you have to look up and find out where a good metal spawn is. Like, there's this mountain that has a good metal spawn, but the mountain is crawling with dangerous dinos. So do you put your main base on the foot of the mountain, on the top of it, or do you just put like a little outpost there so you can go and stop and recharge and get some tools and all that, or drop them off there and cook them there and then bring them back to the main base? So it's these decisions that you have to make about location when it comes to resources. You got to make sure you're not going too far, because if you're taking a long time to get to your base, a lot of things can happen from point A to point B, whether it be hostile dinos that are way over leveled to your dino, or if it's just you on foot, that's even worse. Or PvP, if you're on a PvP server, maybe a hostile tribe raids you or is patrolling in that area and you get destroyed if it's just you. So you really got to weigh your options with resources. But for me, I always will try to put it in a centralized location. Let's say we find a good metal node spawn on a mountain, and then below there's a river that has all the other resources we need, that has ample amount of dinos to hunt as well. So we put our base in between or on the river, and it's on the base of the mountain. So the mountain, still some angry dinos, scary dinos like Rexes and stuff could still come down, but it's unlikely. They would probably stay around the mountain, and it's not too far of a trek to go up the mountain and get the metal. But of course, as we'll cover in later sections, some dinos can alleviate this. So location matters more in the early game than it does in the later game. So as you get into the later game, you can move your base to where you want, but for the early game, you got to try to stick close to the resources and relatively in a safe location where safe dinos spawn. Now, beach bobs, a lot of times, these guys are called that because they live on the beach. It could be enticing to set up a home on the beach, but especially in PvP servers, you're going to be punished for this, because people are going to be scouring the beach for these said beach bobs to destroy and take whatever stuff they have. It is safe, especially on if you're just by yourself. It is a good starting location, I will admit, because it is safe generally. There's no really scary dinos that spawn there, but again, you got to go inland for the resources that you need. There's a lot of locations on the island that I like to use, and I will just list a few of them here. Over on East Zone 1, there's this little like crevice area. It's like a canyon. In the middle of that canyon is a good place to be because you have a lot of resources around you. And if you go up the canyon to the north, it opens up and you can go into a mountain where a lot of metal is. And you're also next to the swamp too, so you can do a lot of swamp foraging. So it's a really good centralized location on the island. On the west zone, there's an island there that's a really good place to set up because it's very safe, but as well there's a mountain inland to it that you can get to relatively easily, and it's got access to the northern biome right there as well. So that one is another good centralized location. Of those two, I would prefer east more than west. South zone, there's also a good little lake area. Like it looks like a peninsula jutting out like lagoon. And that's a good one too because there's a mountain right next to it. It shoots right up. And also, if you go across the sea to the south, there's Herbivore Island as well. So if you have a raft, you can sail over there, but you got to be careful because there's those big fish guys that try to eat your raft. So you got to be careful going to Herb Island with this one, but that's also a really good way to secure some metal, and that base location is relatively safe. So to wrap up this section, location is central to your survival in the Ark, especially when you're starting out. When you're in the later parts, you have certain tames that can help alleviate this and make it to where you can kind of put your base anywhere if you have access or transportation. But in the early game, you want to try to stay next to resources in a safe location where you have access to multiple biomes too. That's also a nice plus to have. So those locations are my top 3 for the island. And like I said, location, location, location. And now we go into one of the mainstays of Ark, taming. Taming dinos is one of the coolest things I ever thought as a kid. When I first played this game, I was like, you're telling me I can knock out, tame a Rex, and just go for it, and just start riding it. I was like, what the hell is this game? And it's one thing that drew me in, but taming also has a lot of strategy around it, both from the dinos that you get because they have different specialties, as well as the strategies you need to tame certain dinos. Like a Rex, you can't just run at it and run away shooting trank darts at it because eventually it will catch up to you and eat you. So how do you tame these creatures, these dangerous creatures? Well, there's certain traps that you can set that any Ark player will know, like the pit trap. Pit trap is really famous. It only really works when you're going up against like medium to small dinos because bigger dinos like a Rex will just be able to walk over it. You make like a 6x6 square pit. It has to at least be stone so that these dinos can't break it. And then you have doorway stone walls running up like 6 or 7 high with a ramp running onto it too. And as you run onto the ramp, the dino chases you, you jump, and it's not big enough to go through the doorways, so it gets stuck. You go through the doorways and it's stuck there, and you just start shooting. You just spraying and praying to knock it out with either trank darts, trank arrows, and that's it. You got your dino. This works, like I said, on all small dinos, but if it's too small, it could fit through the doorway, so you have to make sure that, let's say, if it's like a dodo or something, I mean, who would use this on a dodo anyway? Anyway, if it's like that size, maybe it won't work on a raptor either. They might be able to fit through it, but that's the thing. Some of the dinos are not big enough to go through it. And this can work on non-hostile dinos too. If you struggle with them running away, running into hostile dinos and dying, you can bait them, you shoot them, and this is where it's a lot of luck. If you shoot them and they hopefully run up the ramp into it, then it's good, but they could run in any direction. It's easier to bait hostile dinos with these traps because passive or fleeing dinos you can just chase down, but hostile dinos, good to chase with these ones. So like a Carnosaur would be a good one to chase in here. Sometimes if you make it big enough, you could even chase a Spino, but a Rex usually is too big. You'd have to make it super high, and just by yourself, you won't be able to stack it that high for a Rex. Of course, it's possible if you pour a lot of resources into it, but it's not really that possible in my experience because it's just a lot of resources you got to use. And there's other traps that are better for that. Now, for flying dinos, I mentioned the gate traps. Now, what this is you take the behemoth gates and you make sure you have them set like very close together, or you have columns in between them. It makes like a little cage. And what you do is you bait the flying dino into the cage. You open one hatch, and it flies in, you close it, and before it can fly out, this is what works a lot better with a buddy. You have them close the other gate on the other side, and then they're trapped. You have to make sure it's enclosed totally for the flying dinos. This works really good when you're fighting or trying to catch wyverns. If you have multiple, you can even catch them in the gate. If you close the gate, their model will be stuck in between the pixels of the gate door, and that traps them, and you just shoot them up and then trank them up. So this works good on flying dinos. If you use the massive ones, it could be used to trap a Rex too. These two are the biggest traps that I use to trap dinos. You could of course use the bear traps Rex, which is a trap that you can use. Basically, if you have a dino chasing you that's moderately fast and you have a few points in speed, you can kind of run a little ways and let a Rex chase you and then place the trap down right behind you and it'll trap him, and then you have a little bit of time. Using the high ground is a good way to do it as well. Let's say you find a Rex in a valley, in a mountain, and you have a flyer. You take your flyer, hopefully an RG if you're a true Ark aficionado, and you take him and you find a big rock that's kind of jutting up, too steep for Rex to follow you. You land perfectly, you make sure you get off, and then you have sights on the Rex, you shoot him, and he kind of comes up to the base of the rock and just stares at you as you shoot him. Now, the downfall of this strategy is eventually when he's about to be knocked out, he's going to start trying to run away.
Hey, yo, shut the fuck out, yo.
I don't want to do this no more.
And if you aren't that good of a shot, he might escape before he knocks out. So there is a downfall to this strategy, but there's no resource cost for it. And if you're using like trank darts, you might still be able to get him, especially because the long neck rifle does have a lot of range. So you might be able to get him as he's retreating. Better chance than with trank arrows. Now, bear traps only last for a little bit. For small and some medium dinos, you can also use bolas. This Craftworld weapon is really, really good at snaring these dinos, especially when you're trying to get your flyers. I don't think it works on RGs, but it does work on Pteranodons, which are a nice early game flyer, and it traps them there for like 15 seconds. So you can get at least like 10 darts or arrows into it, and usually if it's a medium level, like if it's level 50 or so, it'll knock out within just a few. So that'll be a good strategy to get those. And it's pretty simple. And then you can use a Pteranodon to bait the Rex into, say, the trap we talked about before, the gate trap. Or if you build a big enough pit trap, you can lure him into there. But again, you got to make the pit trap a little bit higher. I'd say 9 or 10 doorways high so that the Rex doesn't just climb over it because he's such a massive entity. But those are my taming strategies. Basically, the gist of it is you want to try to trap the predators. You lure them into the trap. And for the herbivores, the fleers, you use bolas if they're that size. Or if they're bigger, some of the herbivores will fight you, like a bronto. If they're really big, they will fight you. But most of them are going to be fleeing from you. Or some of them are so slow, like an Anki, that you can pretty much just have him run around in circles until he runs away because he's so slow. But basically the gist is predators chase you, build sophisticated traps for them like the pit or the gate trap or bear traps. And for the medium fleers, bolas, even the net, that DLC was pretty long ago, but when that net gun came out, that was a game changer when it came to taming parasaurs and even trikes. It was like a big old bola, but it put them down for at least 20 seconds, I felt. I don't know exactly how long it did, but it was significantly longer than a bola. So there's also that. So you want to use your taming tools for that, or you can also bait them with a dino to easily get them into a trap. But when it comes to dinos you should tame, there are certain ones that are better than others. Every single one has different things that they do well. So let's say you want to gain more berries, you want to get some narcotics going. Well, you're going to want to get a berry gatherer. There's several berry gatherers that you can choose from. Some are better than others. Some are more defensive, like a trike. Some have more utility, like a parasaur and his sensor ability, because you want to weigh also the utilities you get from these. Or you could just get a big monster like a bronto that does so much, and it can also be a mobile base. So there's certain pros and cons to each. But I will give you my 5 that I really can't play without for these teams that really are good, decent teams. This is no way say you should get these 5 teams or say that the other teams are shit, because every single one, and I pride wildcard for this, they make every dino, bar a few, have a utility that's useful. It's a reason to tame them, bar companionship. I do pride wildcard for that. Anyway, to get into my 5, the number 5 would be the trike. I always tame a trike when I first start because it's very defensive, it's armored, it's got a nice berry gathering ability, it's not too slow, and it can fight off raptors and other smaller predators, so it can defend you pretty easily early on. Again, it's not the best berry gatherer, but it's a nice in-between between a berry gatherer and a decent mount. The number 4 would be an Anki, and Ankylosaurus is very, very good. It is the best metal gatherer in the game. Even though it's very slow, so it's an easy target for some dinos, it also is very armored. So, like the trike, it has a lot of defensive capabilities. Overall, it's very hardy, and like I said, it's the best metal gatherer in the game. If you want to get up in the Ark world, you want to have an Anki, a decent leveled Anki, so you can get a whole bunch of metal and start smelting it up. For utility and for defensiveness, an Anki is always one of my tames that I will just shoot for immediately, because you know any Ark player will tell you got to get a good Anki, and it pairs very well with number 1 as well. Number 3, it might shock you guys, but I actually prefer Abyssal Bufu. Yes, the big frog. Not only because he's very good at traversing the world with his hops and all that, and he's very speedy and he's good in the water. He can outrun most aquatic dinos, but also he's got that tongue. What that tongue do?
Hey yo, what the
He really does knock out other dinos really easily. Hell, I've even knocked out a Rex with one of these guys before. Of course, he was very high leveled, so his tongue knocked out really, really fast. But these guys are really good for getting other tames, and because they're so speedy, they can usually outrun most deadly predators if you try to tame them with these guys. So just for the amazing utility of being able to knock out things with your tongue, and for his speediness, he also has an extra utility. He collects more chitin from bugs. So if you guys are Ark players here, you know chitin makes cementing paste as well. You can get some extra meat from them too. So the chitin farming is really good as well. It's a nice way to get some cementing paste. Of course, it's not the best strategy. Everyone knows raiding beaver dams is the best strategy to get a whole bunch of cementing paste flat out. Crafting it takes a while. You need a lot of chitin, but if you have a Bisabufu and you go hunting insects, you can get bonus chitin from those insects. It's just a plus. That's why I love it. Now going on to number 2 is the all-powerful Rex. Everyone wants a Rex. Everyone needs a Rex, because once you have one, you dominate the land. You just do. Only a few dinos can outclass a Rex. And if you have a Rex that's high leveled, you're going to be able to dominate the whole island and just go where you please. Who's going to mess with you? Smaller predators won't even try to attack you because the Rex is so big. And he runs through trees because he's so big too. So he just topples them down. On top of that, he's one of the best meat and hide gatherers. So if you want to really get all that meat and hide, you just use a Rex and go on a meat run and just kill everything that's there. Rexes are the best dino to take into a boss fight too. Certain bosses, they do suffer because they have a debuff. Even then, they still are a very solid tame, and everybody will get one. It's no joke. But why is he not number 1? I'll tell you why. Because number 1 belongs to my boy, the Argentavis. The Argentavis, he is the GOAT, the best flyer I've ever had. Yes, he doesn't fly as fast as the Pterodon or as some other flyers, but he has so much utility. He reduces weight on so many items, the biggest one being metal. He can carry Anki all the way to metal nodes, then you get off him. He defends the Anki from threats while the Anki harvests metal, and then he carries them all the way. The Anki reduces the weight of metal, and then he reduces the weight of the Anki. So that's doubly great. So he's the best for going on resource runs. Their stamina management is really good for flyers, and they also have a nice heal ability after they kill an enemy that they can heal up. It's like a burst heal for them. So they have an extra survivability on top of it. On top of them just looking gorgeous. They're really magnificent models that Wildcard did for these big birds. They're just really cool. They're really cool to tame. They're really useful all around. They're a very solid flyer, and once you have one of these puppies, you basically can go anywhere in the island. This is the one I was talking about. Once you have a flyer like this, because you can carry a bunch of shit in this RG, you can pretty much use him to go on resource runs and have your base anywhere you want. Once you have an RG, location doesn't matter as much anymore. So those are my 5. Again, you guys don't have to follow it. Maybe some people are talking blasphemy and they don't like the RG. I mean, I question your sanity, but if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's why taming is very strategic in this game. You always want to look for the best dinos for the struggle you're having, and you'll want to look at how you're going to tame that dino. Now, I talked about this earlier, but resource management is another big strategic thing in this game. Finding tames not only allows you to get these resources easier, but the tames also give you a bonus on them. So like if you use your metal pick or stone pick to get metal, you get a good amount of metal, but not a whole bunch. But if you use an Anki, you get a whole bunch more. It multiplies. So using the correct dino for these resources really rewards strategic thinking players. And you'll always want to be thinking about that when it comes to resource management, because you'll want to maximize your resource runs so you get the most return and you can invest the most into building your base, building new weapons, getting new dinos, and pretty much just advancing. So resource management is crucial to this. There are some tames in later DLCs that can regenerate resources. This sounds crazy, but I think it was an Extinction that had these big slots. You could feed them stone or feed them like these little things. They will basically regenerate a random resource. Not very reliable if you're looking for a certain resource, but it's something, and it helps you get random stuff if you get lucky. It's pretty much playing a slot machine with these guys, but they're always producing something, so you're always getting something that can be useful. In this game, every resource is useful, but like I said, you want to prioritize tames that can get better resources, and investing in chests. It sounds like a no-brainer, but using chests to put your resources away just makes it to where you have easy access. It's very crucial in this game to have managerial skills when it comes to managing your inventories, because you can't carry everything. Even your dinos will become overwhelmed overweight, and then they just stop moving when it's so overweight. So you have to make sure you manage your weight accordingly. And having not only your main base full of chests, but also maybe some outposts, or even on base dinos that can carry bases on their backs like a Bronto, is something you should invest in, because then you can have resources everywhere. But stockpiling and looting and basically being a hoarder is heavily encouraged in Ark. And that's all the basis to resource management. You just have to be smart with it. Use the dinos that give you the most return on your resource runs. Store them so that you don't have to just toss them. Because if you're just running around and you put all your points into weight, you don't have points into health or into damage, so you're not going to be really surviving. Pretty much just going to be relying on your tames. And when your tames die, you're back to square one and you have no points in anything else and you die so quick. So resource management leads into survival management too, because you want to make sure that you have enough storage space that you can keep all your resources there. I guess it's pretty much a no-brainer to anybody that plays survival games. It could feel like I'm just saying it just to say it, but there are some people I've seen, they throw it on the ground and they're like, hey, wait, where'd my resources go? I'm like, well, it deleted because you did not store it. So like, where are your storage containers, you know? Or they'll like throw them in their dinos. I'm like, where are your storage containers? These dinos need to be filled with their resources. They need to be free so they can go on resource runs. There are those people out there, believe it or not, Strat fans, and we got to reach out to them and say, hey, what you doing? What are you doing? You got to be more smart with your storage space. But it leads into crafting, because having them next to your crafting machines makes it to where you can just easily get them everywhere. But resource management is pretty much cut and dry. You just want to be mindful of what dinos you're taking so you have the best ones, get the most resources, the most return on investment of your time. Now we get on to the creme de la creme of Ark Strategy, the boss fights. Now, each boss requires certain tames to best. Certain tames do better against each boss, but there are some universally good tames. Like I mentioned before, the Rex is a universally good tame to bring. Whether it's the Broodmother, the big old monkey boy, or the dragon, the Scorched Earth boss, I forget what he's called, or the Overseer. Any of these ones, there are certain tames that do better, like tames that do bonuses to insects do really good against the Broodmother, like a Megatherium. There is a Megatherium Doomstack that you can do against the Broodmother, and it kills her pretty quick. The monkey is pretty much just go for a Rex. That's probably the best way. And also, you don't want to just have a straight on Doomstack of Rexes or Megatheriums or whatever, or Therazinos. That's another good one. If you bring a Uranus or you bring Doodons that heal, they work overdrive to keep the tames alive. The Uranus is really good for buffing. He has a universal buff that buffs stamina and defense for these dinos. So it's really good to have. Having saddles that give you some armor. So highly armored saddles like Ascendant saddles, even if you're not riding the dino, gives you some armor, and so it helps keep them alive. They don't take as much damage from the boss. Still, they're going to take some damage, but they're not going to take as much if they have a high armored saddle on them. I don't know if tech saddles count. I haven't tried that because tech doesn't really work in the boss, so I would imagine it would just be based on the armor value, and it would still work if the armor value is good. Doodons are a really good addition because they are these little hogs. They overfeed. Make sure you have a lot of meat in them. They overeat and they heal the other tames. So while the Rexes are munching down, you have some Doodons healing them up and a Uranus buffing them so that they do more damage and they take less damage. That's always good because it's like a super buff. So you want at least one UD, because you can only take 20 tames. So one UD I usually take with like 15 Rexes and 4 Doodons, full to the brim with me, so that they can, you know, heal them up. You know, if you have Therazinos, same thing. I just pretty much switch out the main 15 with Rexes, Theres, or Megatheriums, depending on what boss I'm going up against. And as the bosses increase in level, they increase in difficulty. So you will want to try to breed your tames to get better stats and get really good high level tames by the time that you're facing the alpha bosses. It's really good to plan these. You still want to go in with them, especially if you can get on like a Doe or any other tame that you bring that can allow you to ride and shoot on the saddle. That'd be good because you want to do some damage yourself, as well as watching out for the dinos that could dismount you, because if you die while you're in there, all your tames are probably going to die too. So you want to defend yourself, make sure you survive the encounter along with your tames. Now, of course, facing gamma bosses, you could probably go up against them with not full 20, but you're going to want to have all 20 of your tame slots filled up when you're going up against an alpha. There are certain tames that can't go in, like a Giga. Giga can't make it in, it's just simply too big, but Rexes are a mainstay. Pretty much switch them out with Theres, Megas. I've even done some runs with Spinos sometimes. Spinos can still work pretty pretty good. Carnos can work, but they're not as powerful as a Rex, and they will struggle a lot. If you take a heavily armored dino in there too, like a Stegos, they can work, but they're not going to do a lot of damage, you know? They could probably defend you and keep you from dying, but they're not going to do a lot of damage. So the big damage dealers, of course, are going to be Rexes, followed by Spinos, Theries, Megatheriums, but Megatheriums aren't going to do a whole lot of damage against the other two bosses, so you'll want to only use them if you're going up against the Broodmother. Their bonus doesn't do anything, and they kind of fall to the medium damage category. Theries and Rexes, though, still do a good amount of damage, no matter which boss they're doing. But the Theries, them not being a carnivore, really helps them when they're going up against, I think it's the dragon. You can correct me in the comments if it's not, but I know one of the bosses has that debuff for carnivores, so the Theries negate that, and that's a good one to bring when you're going up against that particular boss. I want to say it's the dragon, but I don't know for sure. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, because it has been a while since I played, so I'm kind of going on old memories right now, off script, because I really want to share what I think is strategic about this game. But anyway, the bosses are just a spectacle. The Overseer is pretty much, you might want to bring a mixture of Theries and big carnivores, and you'll definitely want to bring the matchup I told you about, Ute, Ranus, a couple Doodons, and your main force, because the Overseer is brutal. He is very brutal. You want to have your main force go up against him while the Doies are healing them up and the Utes buffing them up. And that one's like the ultimate boss fight. After you completed all the other bosses, then you should go up against the Overseer. These bosses are nice stepping stones to do. It feels like an accomplishment after you beat them, especially when you ascend after you beat the Overseer. The boss fights really are where the strategy shines in this game. Now we dive into what a lot of my friends thought the bread and butter of this game was, the PvP. Now, online PvP on Ark, it can get really brutal when you're trying to start, especially even back in the day. The Chinese hackers were still prevalent. I remember a time my buddies and I were chilling on the island map. We had built up a sizable base, and then these guys came in and they had all Chinese characters for their names, and they just completely wiped us out. It was a problem then. It's a problem now still. I don't know how widespread it is because I haven't played in a while, but when I do play, it's offline more because my buddies have long since abandoned the game. They come back every so often, but there's no real safe spot anymore. Anyway, if you were lucky enough to not have any of those guys in there, or if there are some servers nowadays that don't have this problem, there are some strategies you can use to either befriend, make war on, or completely destroy these players. So diplomacy in the early game is often encouraged. Be nice with other beach bobs, or grow a tribe, convince them to come together, find a base, you know, settle down. Diplomacy is very crucial in the early game. As you get later, you can start to be a little mean or fighty, and if people just don't like you, there's nothing you can do about it. Then there are some strategies to deal with them. Of course, certain tames are good at dislodging players from their mounts, or grappling players like a raptor can pin a player down and he can't do anything for a little while, or a Caprisuchus can leap onto a player. There's this little bird dinosaur. Basically, you just throw them like a little angry bat. It stuns the player, forces them off their tame. Tame is easy to deal with if you're a seasoned PvPer, because you have probably a dino that could deal with that tame pretty easily, especially if it's just the tame. But if a player is running on the tame, then the tame is a threat. So if you can dislodge that player from the tame, you can kill him and the tame. These dinos are crucial for PvP purposes when you want to dislodge players from the tames. Now, of course, a Yudi can be good against this too, because they can force some of these smaller dinos to shit themselves and then they start running in random locations. So Yudi is really good as well if you can manage to get it close enough to cause this. As mentioned before, a Stego is really good for raiding because you can use the plates on its back to shield you and absorb damage from turrets as it comes up, and pretty much can be used as a damage soak while you go in and satchel charge up the base and blow a hole in it to raid. There are certain dinos that are good for raiding and for PvP, but when you come to it, you also want to have some tools with you like satchel charges. The net gun is a good one as well. It really does immobilize them. Again, you have to really aim and be close enough to aim at them, but high-powered sniper rifle, the fabricated sniper rifle, is really good. One of my all-time favorite weapons to use when it was against other players. I had so many sniping matches. All fabricated weapons are pretty much built for PvP. The rocket launcher, the Hail Mary of all PvP, and then of course you'll want to get the big dinos like a Bronto or a Quetzal, so you can have mobile bases and just be able to rock up with a whole bunch of stuff, bring out your gear and just smash them. The mobile base dinos are really good. Even even a mosasaur can be really good in PvP, especially if they have a base on an island. So those are the types of dinos that you can use for it. And the gear, PvP, in my experience, before we had those Chinese hackers that just came in and killed us all, it was a last resort. We would always try to ally with them, because if you're allies, you could go into the boss fights together. You'd both get stuff. So I always placed more emphasis on PvE. So I always preached cooperation, but there were some tribes that were not very cooperative and needed to be taken care of. Sneak attacks, a lot of times using ghillie suits is the best way to sneak up on them, but there are some dinos that can climb trees or climb rock faces like a Megalania that are really good for sneaking across certain areas, or like sneaking into trees. A Thycello can climb a tree. Let's say the enemy has a tree base. The only way you can get there is either by that or by flyers, and let's say the flyers get shot down, but you're able to sneak underneath them with a Thycello and then get some guys underneath them. Or you can even plant some explosives on the pad and make it explode. So you really want to start broadening your horizons for tames when you start thinking about PvP, because it opens up a whole nother section of the game to you, so that you can just start massing your collection of dinos and using them to inflict pain and suffering on the players that did not want to cooperate with you. All right, real quick, I want to talk about some special creatures and strategies on how to get them. Now, if you've ever played Scorched Earth, you might have seen the big rock golems, the big old golem guys, or the wyverns. These special creatures require special strategies to tame. The rock golems in particular, they require to be hit in the head with a cannon until they get knocked out. Now, this sounds a lot easier than it is. Oh, well, just roll a cannon. Well, the cannon can only be placed. You can't take it anywhere. So you got to put it on the back of a traveling dino, and basically make sure that traveling dino, like a parasaur, is a good one for this, is just fast enough to not get caught by it. But you also have to make sure the pilot is dodging rocks, because this rock golem will throw massive rocks at you. So I really don't see a way you could tame one of these guys, unless maybe you've got an overlook and you've just got enough of an overlook to where you're able to hit him in the head from far away and his rocks aren't able to hit you. But that'd be very lucky to get that situation. Most likely though, you'd have to get a friend to pilot your parasaur, and you basically bait him out. You get him close enough to where you can hit him in the head. It only takes a couple shots though, usually. So a couple shots, he goes down, and then you can get him. So he's not too difficult, but it still takes at least 2 guys. A wyvern, however, is very dangerous, because you can only raise them from an egg, and you have to snatch the egg. I actually prefer using a whip to snatch it from a distance. I think you can use it while you're on the RG. You can just whip it and then go. But as soon as you take that, you're going to be attacked by them. Now, it would be a good strategy though to set up a trap for these guys and have at least one wyvern follow you all the way to the trap. Have it placed on the side. On Scorched Earth, there's like this chasm where all the wyverns are, but there's a bridge next to the chasm, and I would basically have that bridge be where you set up the trap. Now, if it's a lightning wyvern or a fire wyvern, you'll probably be okay, but if it's a poison wyvern, it might kill you still while it's in the trap, because the poison wyvern has a big area of effect attack. So what you want to do is you bait it with your flyer. After you've taken the egg, are all going to go after you. Eventually, a few of them will go away, and hopefully all but 1 or 2 goes away, and then you'll lead him into the trap, and you'll want to have at least one buddy, and he's standing on the door. He opens the door, you go in, you open the door, you close it really quickly, double tap E to close the second door, and he closes the other door while they're in it. Once they're in it, you basically trank them up, and then you hope that they're females so that you can harvest their wyvern milk, because you're going to need that to raise the baby. Now, a lot of players will wait and just try to get away and hold the egg and try to hatch it, but as soon as it hatches, you're going to need some wyvern milk. So I usually will try to put that stuff on ice, even though it doesn't really do so well in the fridge. Like, it still spoils pretty quickly even while it's in a refrigerator. But if you can hatch that egg quick, you can also keep those female wyverns down there. You have to let them wake up again, so you have to knock them out. But if you don't leave the area, like if you have your friends stay in the zone, they won't despawn. So basically, if you get lucky, you hit the jackpot and you get some female wyverns, you got an endless supply of milk, but you got to let them roam around a little bit and then knock them out again. So that's a good way to tame wyverns. But again, you still need another buddy for this. There's not many of these special tames that you can do without a buddy, just because you need a second person to pilot the dino or to close the gate, because these special tames, they're so easy to escape and to kill you, but they're so cool to get. Most of the tames are one or the other. They're either passive or they're knockout. But some of these special tames, like the wyverns or any tame that requires an egg, like you can't actually tame it, you need to raise it from a baby, those ones are the most difficult. The rock drakes, I think those you can still give them meat, but it's not as effective. But anyway, way. These special tames, and there's several of these that you have to use special tactics to tame. I would even wager that a Quetzal would be a special tame, or any dino that flies way high up, like a Quetzal or a Tabajara. One special tactic you can use, again, you need a buddy for this, is you can use a grapple hook your buddy to the foot of your Argentavis and have him dangle, and while he's dangling, he can whip out his long neck rifle and it'll still be connected. So basically you just fly up next to the tame and you just follow it in the air. Now of course this is not foolproof, because eventually the RG, even though if you've been playing it correctly, you've been leveling up his stamina, eventually his stamina will run out if you haven't knocked it out yet. A Quetzal takes a long time to knock out, and once he does knock out, he drops fully to the ground. So you want to make sure that he's not over a hostile area so you can actually tame him. That's another strategy to deal with flyers. To deal with underwater ones like the big giant squid, everyone wants that too. So, but what you want to do is you want to give him a sacrificial tame. Now for the sacrificial tame, I actually recommend the turtles, the Carbonemus. They're very highly armored, and basically as he's munching on this thing, you take up and you go right up to his mouth, very much in the danger zone, and feed him black pearls. Now you don't have to feed him much because he technically is a passive tame, but you have to pretty much sacrifice a highly armored dino like a Carbonemus, and there's a good chance that that tame might die while you're taming the Tuso. Now you could get lucky and maybe he doesn't die, but there's a high chance of it. But in exchange you get a giant squid, so you know, it's a good trade for me. Common dino to very rare dino to tame. So that's probably the only one you could do by yourself. Most of these ones require another buddy to be able to do effectively. It just emphasizes Ark's online survival game-esque feeling, because a lot of these tames you feel are locked off because you don't have a buddy. But you can still do them, you just be running a lot more danger of dying. But those special taming strategies are ones that you should follow. So now a lot of the big ones, still a knockout tame, but they're really big. In the water, it's a lot harder to do. Trying to tame a plesiosaur or a mosasaur, it's a lot harder to find a safe spot. But what you can do is if you have scuba gear, you have a little bit more of a chance to escape. But a Mosa is pretty big and he's pretty fast too. So you want to use the spear gun, the trank spears, because that will knock him out a lot faster. And if you have scuba gear, that gives you a fighting chance. But there's like nowhere you can really keep him away because you're underwater. There's no cave or no place he can't go to, but you can still make those same traps underwater. It takes a lot more time, but you could do it. And that probably is the best way to tame a Mosa, is to get him stuck in one of the gate traps. The pit trap doesn't work underwater. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. But the cage trap does. The gate trap could still work underwater for these guys. But that's a whole nother section in itself, because underwater taming, there's a whole nother world you're exploring there. That's where you go to get the most consistent oil, silica pearls for making electronics and all that. So it's something you can't ignore. Megalodons are probably the best ones to get for the ocean, but then as you go up, plesiosaurs are pretty good. They're very fast. They're faster than Megs. Mosasaurs, like a big old mobile base, big carnivore. Basilosaurus give you passive oil, or they're better at harvesting it. It's a whole new world down there. You need special taming strategies just for the underwater and for the air. Those are the ones that I use for those special occasions, special dinos in the air and in the water. They all require their own taming strategy. Now quickly, I just want to touch on breeding. Now, breeding is a very interesting thing to do in Ark. Now, you can take basically 2 high-level tames, or any tames, and if they're boy and girl, they do the old lover shuffle, and then they produce an egg, or if they're a mammal, a live baby just pops out. For breeding, the biggest draw to it is having 2 high-level tames produce an even higher level tame. So what you want to do is, when you're picking your tames, decide what tame is going to be a throwaway, meaning you're just going to use it and abuse it until it's overshadowed by another tame, and what tame is going to be breeding stock, because you want to try to breed the highest level tames you can for whatever activities you're doing, whether that be boss fights, PvP, or gathering more resources. It takes a long time to get the breeding done right, and especially with raising these animals, but it pays off. There's so many people, like tribes, that had dedicated breeders that would just come into the server and they would just watch the dinos and make sure they didn't die. That's how crucial it was, because these are such high level tames that came out of these breeding areas that you needed to watch them, because if they died, that's a whole lot of work you did to get that tame just gone down the drain. But the results speak for themselves, because you get insane high levels, and they also, their stats are combined from their parents. So if one parent has insane health and one parent has insane stamina, the baby's going to have both of those traits. It's really crucial in the end game to do breeding, because you want to maximize how high level your tames are. So after you've been doing that, you'll find yourself just clearing boss rooms or destroying enemy bases in PvP, you'll just find yourself steamrolling because your team's just so insane. And also they have a buff called imprinted, and if you imprint on them, they get a nice buff when you're riding them. That always comes in hand too. Breeding is something that's for high-end players that have been playing it a long time, veterans, it is something that's just a given. You have to do it at some point. But for noobs and beach bobs, it's something that they never think of doing. Some people never got to experience that. They just never got out of that phase. They were always either a beach bob, or they were stuck on the beach, or they just kept taming wild dinos. Yeah, that helps you in a pinch. And if you can find a high-level wild dino, that's good too. But you always want to start breeding those dinos together so you can get even higher levels that aren't possible in the wild. It's just a no-brainer. So I just wanted to quickly speak on that, because that also is very strategic thinking, because you got to pick out the perfect specimen for each side to get the perfect specimen of an outcome. Now I come back to base building. Now, I talked about in location, you gotta find a good strategic location for your resources and hostile dinos and everything. That's part one. Part two is actually building the base itself. Now, you could just build a standard structure and just call it a day, but you would probably be punished both by the environment and by other players. Now, let's say you built out in the open plains. Okay, you just have the big old block house out in the open plains. Well, come raid me, please. But let's say you also looked up some strategies, or you knew that you could, little cheeky exploit, I guess you could call it. You could have double walls. Basically, what you do is you place a wall, and then when you go to place another one, you move it around until basically it's like right up against the other one. You can double and sometimes even triple these walls up, and that adds more health onto the walls to break them down. That adds a layer of defense. And then you start investing in auto turrets. Auto turrets are really good. They're all around good measure for defense, and you can have them set to wild dinos, which I don't ever have them set to that because it's not worth it. Or players, they'll only target the players, which is really good, or dinos and players, which you could have it set to that and have them attack the dinos and the players. But a lot of times that doesn't work because they'll just put a dino in there and it'll sponge it up. Now, some dinos will still sponge it, especially if they take a stego and it's trying to target the player. It'll shoot, but it'll hit the dino instead. Or a player will just stand behind a dino and it'll sponge it. So it's not foolproof, but it can help if a player doesn't know that. It's just targeting him and it could just snipe him off of it. And if his dino's set to passive, then it'll just attack the dino after. Now, if you have it set to only players, but the dino will just sit there and then your other dinos can deal with it. So if you have other dinos set to neutral and it attacks the player, the other dinos are going to be aggroed to the player and his dino. So that's a lot of times what I'll do for base placement is I'll place a heck load of auto turrets strategically around the base. Some players just put them on metal supports all around and just have a whole bunch of them, and that can work. It looks ugly, but that can work. Or you could place them on the high ground, especially if you're in like a canyon, on the high ground all around the base, so that when enemies come into the canyon, or if they come outside on top of the canyon, they'll be met with a rain of bullets. And on top of that, you can also have neutral dinos either roaming or just sitting in the base, that when enemies come and cause a slight bit of damage to structures, they'll be aggroed to them and start attacking them, which is always a nice good amount of natural defense. A good house defense dino is a dillo. Dillos have their little spray attack that hampers your vision, and they're a good surprise dino. Like, they break into your house and then splat, their vision's blurred and then they can't see the dillo or the turret that you have in there, and it just lights them up. So that's a good strategy as well for home defense, is to have a couple house dinos that can defend once the enemy breaches your perimeter. Using spikes is a good way to deter both natural dinos and to keep player dinos and players away from you as well. Spiking up strategic ways to get into your base. Like, let's go back to East Zone 1, big old canyon right there. There's 3 passages into it, and then of course it's in a canyon. So most players aren't going to want to jump into the canyon from the top of it because they're going to damage the dino. They're going to try to go through the chasms, so you could spike up those chasms. They aren't going to be able to go through it without damaging the spikes, and that's damaging your building. So then the dinos are going to be on neutral. They're going to want to come attack. Now, this could also damage the dinos because they'll be running into the spikes. But if the enemy's bringing a rocket launcher and they blow the spike up in one shot, then why not have your dinos loose and go and attack them after they've blown through your obstacle? You could also have bear traps set on the ground, especially if you place them in a big wooded area or where there's a lot of foliage on the ground. It can conceal them, and then that stops a player's dino in their tracks. There's these smaller traps that you can use for players too, but I usually just do the big traps for their dinos, because if their Rex is immobilized paralyzed, then it can't do any damage. There's also using the Beelzebuffu to knock out enemy players. That's another reason why he's one of my favorite tames. You can knock out players pretty easily too. You can also use poison grenades. These grenades give a poison cloud, they knock out really fast. There's tripwire mines, there's tripwire alarms too. They trip over that wire coming into your perimeter, you'll know where they are because there'll be a big ass alarm. There's these regular grenades you can use. There's so many utilities to fight and to protect your base. When it comes to that, you're a fool to not invest in these, especially if you're out in an open area. But placing it and strategically blocking off entrances or putting up walls there with turrets and all that, it just makes you more secure. It's not foolproof because, again, there are strategies they can use to soak up bullets, and bullets are something you have to craft. You have a finite amount of them. It's not infinite. So eventually any determined enemy can get in, but you want to make it as hard as possible. Have the best tames, have all the entrance ways blocked, or have some type of obstacle in them. A lot of times when I was at that base, I'd line the ridges, even the ridges where people could jump into the base, because a lot of them, they'd say, well, I'll take a little damage, but I'll jump in because I won't have to barge through these walls he's constructed on all of these other chasms. I'll just jump right into the pit. Well, I put spikes over there. They wouldn't be able to. And I also put tripwire mines too, so they'd blow up when they got through the spikes. I'd also put some bear traps too, and their big dino gets stuck there, and when they hit that, they'd also hit my tripwire alarm. I know where they were. I'd get out of my base and stick my flyers on him. By that point, he's pretty much gone. So you want to place these obstacles and these gadgets strategically around your base so that you can give yourself more awareness, and it just adds more security. Now, if you choose to build in a cave, you don't have to really worry about this. A cave is a very good defensive position, but it's pretty much a straight shot. There's one way in, one way out. So the enemy is just like, we just have to get through that one wall and we're good. But you could pretty much layer it up. You can have a layered defense. Like, let's say you have the wall as your last line, then you have some spikes, some bear traps, tripwire mines, tripwire alarms, maybe have some dillos behind the wall so that they light them up, and a couple turrets as well, hidden, because you can have them hidden in crevices around there so they can't actually see it. It's all about, as they go in with the adrenaline, they get hit right away with something that's hidden, a hidden trap or something. And that's really all you need to know about that. It's very strategic when you have to plan out your defenses for your base. And when you're in a PvP server, it's one thing you really gotta look at doing, because you'll regret not thinking strategically when it comes to your base defenses. One final thing I want to touch on is, again, the importance of tames. Some Ark players, especially those who want to do for challenge runs, think they can go through the game without taming, and yeah, you can, but it probably won't be as enjoyable of an experience. You won't get as much from it because the tames really help ease up the burden for you. They give you a lot more leeway. They really ease up the game. Like I said earlier with my tames section, as an example for the Enkylo, it gives you so much more metal using it than just going with your pick. You're wasting resources without using those tames. For a Rex, you get so much meat and hide, you're wasting your resources just using your pike or using your gun to kill him. Yeah, it's fun and you can do it, but you're wasting the potential. There's a lot more potential of getting more resources and of getting more defense for taming than not taming. All the utilities are basically made to make the game easier and more streamlined as you level up and get more things. Of course, you can do it all yourself. You can. It's possible, but you're going to be at a deficit to other players who have these tames and are able to get 3 or 4 or 5,000 metal from one run, where you can only bring in like maybe 1,500 because you're just using your pick, and you're not able to get as many notes because your weight. And if you put more points into weight than into other survivable aspects, you want to make your character the most survivable heavy guy. Like, he wants to be the most health, the most damage, so you can actually survive if you get knocked off your team. But you want your team to do a lot of the heavy lifting, like a lot of the weight management and stuff. That makes you more of an asset than a liability, because if you put more points into weight for yourself, yeah, you could carry more, but you're not going to be able to take much damage, not going to be able to dish out as much damage, not going to be able to run as fast. A lot of your other aspects suffer if you don't use the tames. And I just quickly want to say that because, yeah, you can do it. It's possible, but it's not really strategically sound to not use the environment around you and use the tames, because using your tames is using the environment around you. And it just makes the game a lot more streamlined, and it's pretty much, you know, a staple. Any Ark veteran will know that. But it is possible to be by yourself without tames, but it's not really strategically sound to do so. And that concludes my strategic in-depth guide for Ark Survival Evolved. Now we come to the final part of the video where I start to tally up all the points we collected, from taming to breeding to location, base placement, the different dino utilities and all that. I'd say It's pretty strategic, wouldn't you, Strat fans? I would say yes. This game is indeed strategic, and you are a fool if you think otherwise. Sometimes it is just luck. Sometimes you do get unlucky. You do run into an enemy tame or a wild tame that's way higher level than yours. It kills yours. Yeah, there are those instances, but you can prepare yourself to minimize those instances and maximize your return on almost every part of this game. So in conclusion, Ark Survival Evolved is indeed a very strategic game, a very strategic survival game, and very fun. And of course, if you guys enjoyed this in-depth breakdown of Ark and other strategic breakdowns of non-strategy games that I cover, be sure to follow me. I have a TikTok, I have YouTube here on YouTube. Make sure that you sub, leave a like, comment down below what you think. I answer all comments. I always try my best to answer it and be as open with you guys as I can be. If you want to see more of these, be sure to sub. I'll always be continuing this series and wanting to look at more games that aren't specifically called strategy games, but you can see the strategy in these games. And I hope you learned something today as well. Or if you're a returning Ark veteran, maybe you got a little nostalgia. So as always, Strat fans, remember, keep it strategic, gonna laugh.